Prosaic question. How do you like the furniture arrangement? I took out one row of cushions and brought the chairs forward to... I got tired of this squinting in the distance in the evening. I wanted my old cozy feeling back from Monroe Street, where people were just sitting right here.
That cushion is farther away than it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's that that effect.
So what questions do you have? Yes, Gail.
In the quote that you read us at the beginning,
Yeah.
the very last word you said is these are not, the relative and the absolute are not separate. They are both one thing.
They have always been integrated and are the two aspects of one and the same thing.
One and the same thing. So can you tell us, what is that one thing? Is it a thing?
That's the translator's difficulty.
Yeah, let's blame it on the translator and go on to the next question. I think, to semi-quote somebody who was saying this about something else, Buddhists don't do thing. I mean, that's like, we don't do thing. So if we take the kind of the solidity and independence out of the word, the reason that, I like the quote, and that's why I read it. So that's about as deep as I'm going to get with that side of it when it gets down to it. But this touches on something that I've found is it's really easy for people to sort of romanticize a this as opposed to that in the Dharma. That there are the things that are spoken of in exalted ways. And then there's our stupid ordinary life and everything that we're just a bunch of dumb schmucks and always doing the same thing over and over again, life after life. You know, you'd think we'd get over it, but we don't. So the one and the same thing. I think for me, it's when somebody like Jamgon Kongtrul does this and brings it together, he's saying, look more carefully at exactly what's right in front of you. It's not somewhere. The one thing, it's not two things. It's not a something. You won't find it some other place. You won't find it later when things improve, when you have better stuff going on in your stream of experience. You won't find it there if you can't find it here. So that's my sense of the one thing. I don't know if that helps. I don't know where you're...
It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
It could be, could you say reality? One reality instead of thing.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's relative and ultimate reality. Kind of.
Yeah, he's talking about that in Buddhist speak, we do make this distinction between conventional reality, the way things appear, and ultimate reality, the way things are. But then he goes on to make the case that actually thinking that they're two different things. If we're going to stay in the realm of thinking about things, which is what we generally do, then don't think about them as two things.
two other fingers pointing at the moon. That's all we're doing, fingers pointing at the moon. Because of course, we have to talk in concepts, right? That's what humans do. But we have experiences that are non-conceptual, which are more powerful. There's a part of another text called The Three Principal Aspects of the Path, and one of the lines say, basically ultimate truth and conventional truth are simultaneous and concurrent. So that's some other words pointing at it. And until we experience it simultaneous and concurrent, we're in duality. You know, the appearance seems different than the ultimate nature of the appearance. So that's one, but the other story I like is Chogyam Trungpa, when reportedly, I wasn't there, someone asked him, well, when I realize emptiness, what will it be like? And he said, this, and looked around, this. That's it. And the Dzogchen way of going at it is that ultimate nature permeates every appearance. Permeates. There's no, the sesame seed metaphor, the sesame seeds permeated with sesame oil, every part of it. So every appearance is permeated with the empty nature. So we can get into it a little slower by deep interdependence, looking at that, or impermanence. Those both point toward it. Every appearance is impermanent. You can tell that. Shift, 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 shift. Yeah, we can start right there, like get a little foothold, toehold.
So when if we do Vipassana practice and we're just following basic like instructions of questions to ask as we're looking, like looking at the mind or trying to look at the mind, whatever, that means. Is that in order to have that experience without that being conceptual?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the other part, I don't know if this
I'll just go back and make it, you can make it easier on yourself when you say, looking at the mind, whatever that is. You can just say, whatever I am looking at, I'm looking at mind.
Looking at what?
Whatever I am looking at, I'm looking at mind.
Okay,
Oh.
yeah. Okay.
That would be one of the corollaries that you could draw from this.
Okay. So the actual, like, I think of it as like, it's almost like using a muscle or something. Like, by following those instructions and asking those questions, even though my mind is looking at my mind, it's also, I'm doing something I don't normally do with my looking or my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I just always, I kind of have this sense like, it's like I'm trying to do a magic trick or something. Like I'm going to suddenly be gifted with this clear insight or something, Is that, I mean, I know it's not magic, but I mean, is that, you just said like that's how because we can't, I mean, we can think of we can listen and read all these explanations of this, but we're not going to have the experience by reading or just thinking about it, right? Like,
that's a very long path, and you have to really apply yourself with an incredible level of rigor to do it that way. The intellectual, with you following the intellectual method, where you've gone through every aspect of your experience so carefully that you've eliminated in your mind any possibility, and then you're left kind of face to face with your experience. But that's a different style, and it requires if we just kind of learn, if we do that and do kind of think about it or read enough so that we learn the jargon, we can be left in just jargon land. We know the words emptiness, and we know the words dharmakaya, and we've learned all kinds of other fancy words, but we don't actually have the experience. So the methods here are in actually getting us to slow down enough. That's part of the business with shamatha, is being able to slow down enough so that you can actually start to look in a different way. You can relate to your experience in a different way. And at first, it's like the still mind. And even if it's just brief moments, and this is part of the challenge, is we want to extend something. And to go back to we don't do thing in the Dharma. There isn't a thing to extend, so it very quickly becomes very frustrating, because we want to do something, and then we want to stretch that thing out. But even in brief moments of stillness, we can just turn directly back into that stillness and just drop one of the questions, not a whole string, just drop one of them. Whether is this stillness inside or outside the body? Or does it have a size? And that will allow us to just settle more into that, kind of relax into that. Relaxing into that kind of more and more is part of it. That allows it to open. The relaxation that we can build in shamatha becomes a part of the picture with insight practice. It's very, very gradual. But we also work with movement. We work with the movement of mind. So those are the first two basic things done in insight, is to work with stillness and then to work with movement. If we don't have some little moments of stillness and actually just turn the attention back into that, it's difficult to go at it. But it is actually possible to go straight through appearance, go straight through where does a thought arise, where does it dwell, where does it go, those kinds of questions. But we can't be lost in the content of the thought. We can't be inside the corral that's built by that thought. We have to just, in that case, we almost have to treat it just thing. So we do treat it like that, and then we look to see what's going on. We have to do it over and over again, in little bits, and then relax with it. Look, relax, look, relax. Does that get any closer?
It's helpful. I just wanted to make sure I was, kind of on the right track, and it's easy to get off track.
Well, sometimes I think it's easy to think that we're off track. And and then spend a lot of time thinking about how we must be off track. That one I think is really easy. And I think there's a very strong inclination to do that because that's more entertaining. It's kind of, well, I know how to do that. I can talk about how I'm off track. And it's very hard to have confidence in something that is fresh and doesn't kind of fit within all our other stories. Like, no story to tell about it. Well, that's unfortunate. I wanted to tell a story about it. I'm really good at telling stories, and this no story is very inconvenient. So I better tell myself the story that I'm just really no good at this.
Not good.
I don't know. Yeah, but I was just reading some about some things from Trungpa Rinpoche and others, and all of them talk about how it's easy to want to kind of try to make something out of it, one way or another. We want to do that. But the universal instruction is whatever the launch point is, whatever the launch question is, then relax. Just let the mind settle right there, just like you've dropped a rock in the water. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the challenging part for me, is that relax. It does feel like, when I said it feels like I'm trying to do a magic trick, like there's effort in trying
To not do anything. Yes.
Or in
Yeah.
that moment, it's like, I feel like there's a tension of trying to achieve something. It talks about in the books, like, you can't create it, it's like, so yeah, I think that's so it's good to hear that reminder of that relaxation.
Yeah, and it can really just have the feeling of, like, I give up. Like, we'll just see what happens here. And so to relax in that way of just having given up, and then to not and the way Michael's been talking a lot lately about the doing short sessions, like really short sessions, so you sort of then to kind of declare the experiment over very quickly. Say, now I'm going to go back to do my shamatha again. So there's no burden. If you take the burden off in that moment, then that can be helpful. It's very difficult to have confidence that something that kind of the half-life of our average experience with this is in fractions of a second. It's very hard to have confidence that actually accumulates something, but it does. And I think it's really important to have that sense of confidence and happiness about it. Then we're not measuring against some non-existent yardstick that we wouldn't recognize that yardstick, even if we just think we have one and we know we don't measure up, and that's the end of it. We don't even need to look. We don't even need to find the yardstick. We know what it says.
I can share something from 1 year retreat from Lama Michael, when we got to this part, about calm abiding and then launching questions that lead you into insight, more into the insight of nature of the mind. We tend to go conceptual so fast that we crash the flash even, So you ask the question, is that sound inside or outside of my mind? Then right away, I want to start thinking about the sound. Oh, inside my mind. Oh, outside my mind. Inside and outside. Do I have an inside? And we didn't drop the rock, we threw it backwards into the bushes or something, so we don't get those ripples. But it's about first, not to launch these questions till your shamatha is pretty stable. You know, if your mind's really busy, you're going to launch one of these questions, and these questions are known, there's bunches of them. Where is this experience occurring? Does my mind have a color, a size? You know, all of these. But launching them and kind of playing with them before we have a nice, calm, not perfect, but calm base, we're not going to get that experience, that new thing that Bill's talking about and you're talking about, some kind of like, and then right away our conceptual habit jumps in and starts trying to make something out of it, or judges it, or says, I can't do this, or I'm great at this, or oh, that was it. And that's okay, but then go back to shamatha. That was the instruction. Then drop all that, go straight back, calm the mind back down, go to your object or no object shamatha. And that really helps give some confidence, at least in my small experience in that, when you retreat, that confidence of, oh, I'm totally back in my conceptual thing, just go back to shamatha, build it up again, you know, then do it. And it's really about the experience, but not trying for an experience. Yeah. It's just like anything we do. You know, you start doing a new anything. We're not very good at it at first. We have to learn.
Something makes me want to ask, what is experience?
Look.
But we're looking to have an experience?
No. No, just that that gets into the ultimate reality would be something somewhere else and better.
Right.
No. Just experience.
You're having one right now.
Do you have zero experience at the moment, or would you just kind of conventionally say, well, I think something's happening?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just dumb question, but it just came up. I just felt like, you know.
It's not. It's
what
not
is experience?
That is not a dumb question in the slightest. It's not. That would be actually, if you actually relaxed with that, that could be a wonderful insight question. One of the things that happens after you've done enough insight practice, you get the joke. You see what the move is, and then kind of pretty much anything. The world is your oyster when it comes to insight at that point. Anything can be the basis for that kind of like, I never stopped to look. And that question, what is experience? Run with it.
I remember one time in a retreat or something, Ken McLeod said, all we have is experience and awareness. Which is, so there's experience, and then there's, when you say, what is experience, I don't know if you're asking what is it, or what do you mean by experience? But from the Buddhist point of view, we really don't have anything else. In a lot of ways. Anyway, that's one way to, I mean, in kind of a conventional Western non-Buddhist sense, we'd say, well, we have, the external world out there, and we have, me here, and we have you there, but actually, if we look, we have an experience of the table. We can't say we can't tell anything beyond the fact that we can experience it. We can't tell it's something that could, I don't know, do things on its own. I mean, it's anyway. So that's what we have to work with. That's what we practice with, is our experience. But then there's experience when we talk about having, let's say, meditation experiences. Those are certain kinds of experience. But we're always having experience.
What's so funny?
Nothing, actually.
Nothing. Oh, in a Buddhist context, that has a whole different spin. You have anything? No. No, I don't want to put you on the spot, but except that I do.
I did amuse myself a moment ago thinking about this government meeting I'm going to be at, and when you were saying, what is enlightenment, what is experience, I was thinking I was going to think that in the middle of my meeting, that this is it, this is great.
This is it.
Yeah.
I guess I had a 10-year yoga practice that was pretty serious, and so as I hear about some of these questions, kind of dealing with the mental chatter while doing something silly like trying to touch my toes, or I'm not necessarily a very physically gifted person like that can do backflips or anything. Trying to stand on my head was like a 4-year ordeal, and hearing all that mental chatter, trying to get myself upside down without fear. I kind of hear that, like struggling with that conceptually here while you're just sitting and not necessarily doing anything crazy like going upside down. And it just like lately I just remembered, that my yoga teachers were saying that traditionally yoga was used as a way to prepare the body and the mind for meditation. And it just occurred to me like that last week, after 10 years of doing it. But so I kind of hear these things, and I just kind of find the resonances from my old yoga practice, which I don't really do anymore, but I feel like it has sustained me a lot in the considerations of what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Any of the discipline in even one pose, you could say it's like that's one form of calm abiding, because you have the form, and then you bring your mindfulness to what you're doing, and to the whole gestalt of it, the whole piece of it. And so it's very it is a great support. But we could say the asana for meditation is just to sit. And even in that, then there's all kinds of discoveries to be made. Like, oh, I guess I lived my whole life with this shoulder kind of forward into life, or I can only sit up like this for 4 minutes without extreme pain because I always sit like this. Just and all the things that go with the resonance of those things. So just being able to find that place of balance, and it's a significant piece of practice because we bring our bodies along for the ride. It's part of the journey. Yeah. So living with the body is actually a big piece of the practice. And I don't think we don't actually, we don't relate to it as much in the West, since we're very psychologically oriented and very intellectually oriented. And we tend to think if you just look at who gets paid for doing what, people who go to school for a long time and sit behind desks or do stuff with their minds, that's where the money goes. Yeah. The people who are just working with their bodies, it's not so much money. It's not so much money, but in that pattern, we've actually sort of left something behind. We've left a dimension of our being behind. So there's something there. Yeah, the sitting is just the nice thing about most yoga poses is they're sufficiently complicated that they give us enough for the mind that wants to try to figure stuff out. It's like, well, where is my right hand versus my left hand? Where is this? And can I actually get upside down? And what is upside down anyway? Is that upside down or is that upside down? All those things. And just sitting is, even that much is a bit of a challenge, but it's just like with the mind, it's too simple. I want something to do more. I want more. It brings the chatter into like, oh, I see what's going on. Yeah. Thank you.
I wanted to go back to Linda's question about experience because it's very intriguing. And one of the ways I play with it is and totally related to body, is the 5 senses. They're just on all the time, except in deep sleep. They're just on. You're looking, so there's experience. Meanwhile, your body's feeling your chair. You might not be focused on that, but that's happening. There's sound, there's smells, there's taste, it's just the 5 are just feeding in constant experience. And sometimes it's just good to kind of notice that, like, wow, what a circus. Even you're sitting completely still. All those are going. You have to do something with them, something. And then the 6th one is the mental sense, which Buddhists add to, Western take on it. The mental sense, which is constantly making something out of those, either blocking them out, like, oh, I didn't notice anything about this cushion. Now when I think about it, oh yeah, now I notice. Oh, but I was really noticing my eyes, the yellow, the red, all the colors of clothes. I mean, we're always doing something with it mentally. And then the mental in Buddhism is, you know, from coarse to more and more and more subtle. So those experiences are also happening. There's so much experience going every minute. They say, except in deep sleep and except when our minds experience the Dharmakaya, totally different experience, not those 6. So it's just kind of an interesting blueprint, just to hold in the back of the mind, not to try and get all caught up. But I find it helpful to have, you know, some kind of blueprint rather than we're just trying to figure it out brand new on our own. Yeah.
One of the virtues, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, is that it actually allows us, gives us permission to ask that question in a kind of an organized way. Hello, Bill. I'd like you to meet the domain of tactile sensation. Please say hello. You'll be alone together now for the next 50 minutes.
Ouch.
So, get to know each other.
In the past, I've found that the formal insight exercise of asking the questions, formally asking questions, this kind of gets to the experience thing too. The experience of asking the question, I found it problematic because it involved words which got me all busy. So without asking anyone if this work was okay, I just stopped using words. I would just have the felt intention to look, and just look without words. And I can't say objectively whether that was successful or not. I just have a sense of the experience. That's why it gets into the experience thing. So it was like you were just saying, Zopa, enter into an experience of any one of the 5 senses, or the 6th sense as well, but again, not using any words to do so. I just found the words too problematic.
Then you should use words more.
Oh no.
Are you
I'm actually being serious and joking
That's
at the
what I'm
same
afraid
time. And there's one way in which your instinct is quite correct, but I'll point out something that you had to go through the process of launching the question before you became familiar enough with the move that was involved in the question. If you ask yourself over and over again, where is the still mind? Where is the still mind? Pretty soon you don't have to ask. But you have to have gone through that annoying part before it becomes clear what the move is, kind of the character of the move. So from that point of view, it's integrated in that way. So then it's like, yes, fine. Whatever moves you've learned in order to kind of just look, and you can actually start to extrapolate from a limited number of questions to learning that sense of turning the attention. So from that point, it's good. Now for the bad news, which actually is just another. It's just another horizon. If we're bollocksed by the question, we can use the question itself as the basis. Then you have to learn to take the move that you learned and turn it directly at the thought of the question. It doesn't have to be a question. It could be any thought. But you have to be able to do that. And then after you get kind of used to that move, then whatever question, it's not such a big deal. It's not like, oh my God, it's a question, it's thinking, oh my, and then it's like.
Wasn't that bad. but,
if I'm just act kind of ordinary, it's boring.
Yeah, that's too sleepy.
Yeah.
So similar then to when the other exercise of seeing thoughts arise, observe that they've arisen, stay with them, and see where, pay attention to where the space they went into, they disappeared into. It's similar to that.
Yeah. So becoming, the more we're familiar with that, there's you don't have the question on top of the question.
Mm-hmm.
There you have the thought, and then this other question that you're bringing to it. But the more familiar you are, the less.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to actually type out the whole thing first in order to send. Here's the text, and now I'm going to send that to my thought. Dear thought, where are you? Love, Bill. Send.
Could do it in pencil. Thank you.
Judith. Behind you. She's sneaking up behind you.
Here's a thought. And I can relate to your thought about it. So I've read in Kala Rinpoche's Luminous Mind, and other places, of course, the characteristics of mind, being clarity, openness, and sensitivity or unimpededness. So that sounds good. But I wonder, not a but, and I wonder where the compassion comes through in that. And are we developing compassion in the process of experience such that there's some sort of change or something happening there, and then bringing that into an experience or some kind of idea of emptiness? So does it give compassion that we develop? Of course, it's not mind, right? But does it give compassion that we develop legs?
Does what give the compassion legs?
The characteristics of mind.
You could say yes to everything. Okay. Yes. That's too simple, though. So you asked at least 3 questions. Do you remember them? First was empty. You said clarity, openness, and unimpededness. And then there was some other piece.
So where does compassion come through in that?
Where does it come through in that? It comes through, not so much through that, when it's recognized, is compassion. It is active. When we are lost in our own self-absorption and our clinging and fears, that all gets in the way. Then we have to do these funny little end runs around our experience. I will have compassion in spite of the fact that I'm afraid. I will have compassion in spite of the fact that I'd actually really rather go do something else now. There is, and all our active cultivation of compassion from our ordinary perspective is, in a certain way, overcoming the ignorance. It's doing something to work around and soften the ignorance. So when we actually see, and the we and the seeing is like, all right, let's throw those, when the seeing arises, that sees how this mind is, the fears and the desires that otherwise drive everything out of their ignorance, they're gone. And the notion of a me that is feeling well-being because I have experienced emptiness, that's dissolved. So it's not the energy that was wrapped up in me getting my way, whether it involved getting something or getting rid of something. That energy is not wrapped up in that. So it's just plain available. And it's not, there's no boundary for that. It's not contained within a meanness of my bliss emptiness. So that's something that's easy to experience, like with somebody like Kala Rinpoche or Boka Rinpoche, Trungpa Rinpoche, all these beings that have really soaked themselves in this in a deep way. It's possible just to feel that their joy is not a personal domain. It's not like, well, I'm happy, what about you? I can take my joy and go off someplace because you're kind of a bummer. There's no sense of fear about it. It's not like whatever our confusion is, it's not a threat in any way. It's just we're in that field with them. It's very different. It's a different kind of thing, and we just have to step outside of this notion of a me that would experience emptiness. Otherwise, the logic of it says, I would say that all of you are empty, and I might as well go home and eat chips and watch TV. That's the logic from the point of view of ego, but that's not the experience of it. So, yeah, somebody's going to have to fix it. No.
No, great. Just that in the middle turning, we talk about wisdom and compassion, almost like the two wings of the bird, and you gotta, but we're now in the third turning, talking about this kind of insight, and it's natural compassion, no longer contrived. So, like Kala Rinpoche, Khenpo Lodra Donyo, natural compassion walks in the room. The Dalai Lama. When I walk in the room, I'm working at it because I don't have it yet. But we fake it till we make it. In that faking it, we can get confused, like there are two. I'll get the wisdom, then I still have to give it legs to be compassionate. But no, once we actually achieve the level Bill was touching on, natural compassion is, so we have to use these kind of words, there. And it just arises from the no self, no other.
You could say
There's
it's beyond even it arises.
Yes,
That's gone
there.
too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what helps me is the natural compassion versus the contrived, where we're working hard at it as though there's wisdom and compassion. They're not separate, ultimately.
And that connection is related to, so they talk about, it's a coexistent with recognizing the way things are, is there has to be compassion because there's a recognition of how beings are suffering due to not recognizing. So in the moment that you have recognition of the openness, the empty nature, you see how others are suffering from not recognizing. So that's another thing that's said. So it's built in. you can't have that without the other.
And that, thank you. And that I think about the individual work of seeing our own suffering, our own confusion, our own ignorance, just kind of seeing it very closely, and having that be the vehicle through which we see or recognize or generate compassion.
Yeah. Yeah, we still have to do that work. We're not there yet.
Well, Deborah kindly reminded us that time has gone. Thank you. Just for clarity there, a nice firm bell. So we can dedicate the merit of this, that we may come to recognize bliss emptiness, which is no other than compassion itself. By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thank you all. Great questions. Probably. Well, that was a good session. Deeper into insight.
Thank you all for your consistency and participation.